one of the most powerful empires in the world, collapsed in just 2 years. Millions of people lived under its control in cities that rivaled anything in Europe at the time. It was organized, powerful, and deeply established. And then, in what felt like a moment, everything began to fall apart. But this wasn't just a simple invasion. The invading force was smaller, outnumbered, and far from home. So how did an empire this powerful collapse so quickly? The answer isn't just war. It's a combination of decisions, timing, and something far more devastating. And once you understand what really happened, the collapse starts to make sense. This is the story of how it all happened. At its peak, the Aztec Empire dominated central Mexico. Its capital, Tenochtitlan, was one of the largest cities in the world at the time. Built on an island, it was connected by bridges and surrounded by water. To outsiders, it was unlike anything they had ever seen. The empire was highly organized, with systems of tribute and control. Regions under its control were required to provide resources and labor. This made the empire incredibly powerful, but also created resentment. Many of these groups were waiting for an opportunity, and that opportunity was coming. At the center of the empire was its ruler, Content Reference Index 1, a respected and experienced leader, but one who would soon face an impossible situation. Because in 1015-19, strangers arrived on the coast, and nothing would ever be the same. This was the beginning of the end. In 1519, a Spanish expedition landed on the coast of Mexico. It was led by Cortés. He brought only a few hundred men, but they carried steel weapons. They had horses, animals never seen before in the region, and tactics unfamiliar to local forces. As they moved inland, they encountered local groups. Some of these groups were enemies of the Aztecs. And this changed everything. Instead of facing the empire alone, they gained thousands of allies. Their numbers grew rapidly, and their confidence grew with it. Meanwhile, news reached the capital, and Montezuma had to respond. But the situation was unclear. The newcomers were unlike anything seen before, and hesitation began to set in. That hesitation would prove critical, because every moment gave the Spanish more time. And soon they reached the capital, Tenochtitlan. And what happened next would change everything. Forever. When the Spanish entered Tenochtitlan, they were not immediately attacked. Instead, they were welcomed into the city, allowed to see its structures, its people, and its wealth. This decision has been debated by historians for years, because allowing a foreign force inside the capital created a massive risk. But at the time, the situation was uncertain. The Spanish were still a relatively small group, and their intentions were not fully understood. But once inside the city, their strategy began to change. They moved carefully, observing key locations and positions. And eventually, they made a bold move. They captured Montezuma. The emperor of the Aztec Empire was now under their control. This shifted the balance of power instantly. With their leader controlled, the empire was thrown into uncertainty. Tension began to rise throughout the city. Trust broke down between the Spanish and the Aztecs. And eventually, conflict erupted. The Spanish were forced to flee the city. But even as they left, the situation had already changed. Because something else had already begun spreading. The Spanish had not come alone. They brought something with them that no one could see: disease. Smallpox began spreading through the population, and the Aztecs had no immunity to it. It moved quickly through the city, affecting thousands of people in a short time. It weakened the population, and disrupted leadership. At the worst possible moment, when the Spanish returned, they did not come alone. They returned with thousands of allies. The empire they faced was no longer at full strength. What followed was a long and brutal siege of the city. And after months of fighting, Tenochtitlan fell. With the fall of the capital, the empire collapsed. But this wasn't just a simple conquest. It was a combination of decisions, alliances, and disease, all happening at the same time. And together, they changed history forever. One of the most powerful empires in the world, gone in just 2 years.